Now, let's have a look at this fascinating research from the IPA. Matthew Cranston in The Australian writes that the federal government's spending on climate change and net zero policies has reached $9 billion a year. This is reportedly up from $600 million a year just a decade earlier and up more than 400% in the last term of Parliament. Richard, what do you think about this? I mean, at a time when there's a lot of pressure on the budget, cost of living crisis, pressure to find more money for defence, is this worth it? $9 billion a year? Is it delivering value for taxpayers?
No. I think we're going overboard on this. I support the principle, but when you look at the practice, you've got to be, I think, sensible enough to keep the spending within bounds. And we're not doing that. I think we're letting this go up and up and up, and it doesn't seem to have a ceiling. If it does, I can't see it.
Yeah, and not only that, Michael Kroger, the government seems very far off, in fact, potentially impossible to meet the emissions aspirations.
Well, it looks that way from all the commentary, that they're not going to get anywhere near net zero. But look, I think the government's, got to come out and say exactly how we're going to get there in simple terms so the ordinary person can understand this incredibly complex calculation, which relies on technologies not yet invented, by the way. What did anyone think was going to cost this amount of money, given that the biggest emitters in the world and have not signed up to this pledge? The damage it's doing to the Australian economy, the massive increase in electricity prices, generally speaking. And again, run by a guy like Chris Bowen, who's been a disastrous minister during his career. I mean, no private sector businesses in this country would put Chris Bowen in charge of such a massive project with a blank cheque, given his failed history as a minister. So again, this is another potential disaster. Now, Labor say, oh, we won the election, therefore it validates what we're doing. No, let's not forget. This election was won by the Labor Party basically lying about Medicare, lying about nuclear, scaring the liver daylights out of people about Donald Trump, etc., etc. Right? They didn't win because everyone endorsed this policy without knowing the amount of money involved, and it's not an endorsement of their tax on unrealised gains either, Sharri.
That's a trouble. I agree with you. Chris Bowen is probably one of the worst ministers out of a bad bunch. Now, this was a really...
He'd be a good minister in the Whitlam government. You'd put him in the Whitlam government. That's
Indeed.
Where he belongs, with all those legends.
We need some of the sensible, Richo, some of your colleagues, the sensible cabinet under Hawke and Keating. Where are those sort of Labor politicians these days? Well, I guess, we have a centrist premier in Chris Minns, and South Australia as well, centrist Labor premier. Pity they're not in the federal government running the country, though. I want to turn to this story in the Fin Review. This is, look, there's a lot of things on this topic that are upsetting at the moment, but this is quite outrageous. So Safe Work New South Wales was called in to investigate the anti-Semitism at the University of Sydney. And there was actually a recommendation to launch a full investigation. But, and this is from Julie Hare in the Fin Review, despite their own preliminary report finding that a full investigation would uncover contraventions of law, and that Jewish workers and students experienced anti-Semitism daily while on campus, creating a workplace of fear, anxiousness and retribution. Despite that, they decided not to have an investigation. No reason was given. And by the way, all of this detail was only uncovered through a Freedom of Information request. I mean, Richo, it found that the University of Sydney, and we know this to be true, but here's an official report from an official government agency, finding that the University of Sydney failed to protect Jewish students and staff in the 11 months after the Hamas attack. Again, they need to reconsider the decision not to launch a formal investigation, don't they?
I wish they would. I really worry about anti-Semitism, and I don't want to, in any way, shape or form, allow it to fester in this country. It's just got to be stopped, and it's got to be stopped now. Now, unfortunately, you'll always get anti-Semitism. You never have to scratch this far below the surface to find it in this country, and that's a really tragic thing. But that doesn't mean you stop in any way, shape or form your efforts to suppress it as best you can. we must do everything possible to suppress that anti-Jewish, and I guess it's just a hatred, that a dumb hatred. You know, that there's no intellectual reason for it. It's just dumb.
And of course, this was serious failings by the University of Sydney, where the former ABC boss, Mark Scott, is the Vice-Chancellor. Michael, I want to get your view on this recount. We found out the results of it today, the recount in Bradfield. Now the seat has gone to the Teal Nicolette Bowl, not Giselle Capterian, the Liberal candidate. Now, Susan Lee had already given Giselle a portfolio, which was a bit premature. Do you think the Liberal Party are going to accept this result, or do you expect there'll be another challenge?
No, of course they shouldn't accept the result. Not because they're bad losers, but because you're talking about 26 votes out of 110,000. And let me tell you, Sharri, when 110,000 votes are written in pencil on a piece of paper, right, the fine line between what's a formal vote and what's an informal vote will run into hundreds and hundreds of votes. Is that a 6 or is it an 8? Is that a 1? Is it a 7? Is it formal? Is it not? Right? They've crossed something out. They've renumbered. There are thousands of votes in that category alone. Right? To say, oh, those numbers are exactly right and she won by 26. She didn't win by 26. You count that again, you'll get a different result. It won't be 26. It'll be out by tens, perhaps hundreds of votes, because every time you look at formal votes, you will find
Michael,
informal votes.
Do you think there
you
needs
go to
to
the Court of Disputed Returns. Of course, you go to the Court of Disputed Returns. There are, of course, a number of votes where people voted twice. Tom Connell's been talking about this without giving us the number. It looks as if there's more than 10, perhaps more than 20 votes where people voted twice. But do you think there needs to be
another election?
Of course. Of course.
So you think everyone in Bradfield should go to the polls again?
Yes, of course. That's what, unfortunately, that has happened in Australian history on many occasions. This vote is not clear. No offence to the winner, it's not her fault. But out of 110,000, are there more than 26 votes which should be informal that are formal, and vice versa? Of course there are. The result is a nearest the pin result. That's what you get in these elections when it's within 26 votes out of over 100,000, Sharri.
All right, so it sounds like we haven't heard the end of this saga in Bradfield. The excitement continues. All right, Richo, Michael Kroger, thank you both so much.